Hello everybody, this is some guy, not dead surprisingly, and here with something different. It's nearing that magical time that only comes every so often where we get ourselves a new King of Fighters game. With the open beta for King of Fighters 15 going on right now, and with many people trying 15 out as their first venture into the KOF series, I wanted to make a guide here to help people get into my second favorite fighting game franchise. Don't worry, I love the three of you equally. If you're like me, you're not too big on reading all of this, and preferred things to be explained in an audio-visual format. That's what I aim to do here. Now let me just get some things out of the way here before we get into this. First, this video guide is to help with anyone trying to get into any game in the series, but there will be a focus on King of Fighters 14, as that is the one most alike to 15, which I assume most of you will be playing. 14 does have many mechanics from older King of Fighters games, but some games have their own mechanics that I will not get into. Second, you may be wondering why I don't use the King of Fighters 15 if I'm trying to help people who are mostly going to start with 15, and that is because currently at the time of recording, the beta is the only thing available and things are subject to change. I would not like to tell you guys any information then have it be changed by the time final release comes out and it's not viable anymore. Third, I apologize in advance for my inputs during this guide. My fight stick is currently undergoing some tweaking, so I had to do this with a gamepad and my left thumb isn't nearly as accurate. I will be putting proper input motions on top of the screen as to not confuse you guys or make things seem more complex than they are. Finally, this is not a character guide. This is only explaining universal mechanics and giving out some tips to make things easier. If this video doesn't turn out to be a disaster, I will make some character guides at a later time. With that said, let's answer the question you've probably got since you clicked on this video. How do I play?
The King of Fighters!
The King of Fighters, a 2D fighting game series, no, we don't acknowledge those ones, that started way back in 1994 is the crown jewel of the SNK catalog in my opinion. An all-star matchup that pits SNK's best characters from various series against each other, along with a healthy smattering of original characters to help push a plot along. Plot quality varies. What differentiates KOF from other fighting games is its movement options, speed, which I would describe as a happy medium between Street Fighter and whatever anime fighter comes to mind for you first, and its unique take on the 3v3 team battle rule set. There is a 1v1 mode in most KOF games by the way, but almost everyone plays team battle. If you just had visions of Marvel vs. Capcom, Fighter Z, or Tekken Tag, then please shelve those away because KOF does not have assists, nor does it have mid-round character swapping, except for those few times it did, but that's gone now. KOF handles teams on an elimination basis, as in you pick the order of your three characters, and whatever characters goes first stays in there until they're KO'd or completes the sweep. If some health has been lost but the character wins the round, then they get some health back depending on how much time was left in the round. If they do get KO'd, then the next character in the order comes up to bat, and this continues until one team loses all three characters. But wait, you may be asking, what's the purpose of this team system if there's no assists and swapping is out of your control? Well, hypothetical viewer, that brings us right into the first bit of gameplay explanation I have for you, and it's two factors you should know before you even select any characters. As you now know, there are three positions on a team, first, second, and third, but these positions are also known as point or battery, mid, and anchor respectively. But why? Well, that's because in KOF your entire team shares 1 meter that carries over from character to character, and with each lost character your team's meter has its limit increased by 1. So while your point maxes out at 3, your mid can have 4 and the anchor can have 5 bars. That adds an excellent layer of strategy along with shifting how certain characters are perceived. There are characters that are considered low tier points but high tier anchors, for example. Let me just give you a quick rundown of the traditional functions of each position. Points or batteries go first, and as the latter name suggests, these are the characters that power your team. Usually these are the characters they may not have the greatest super moves in the world, but they can make up for that by being able to hang in there with their good normals and specials, building up meters that can be spent later on. Mids are the in-betweeners that definitely benefit if they burn meter but can also stick in there without it. This is where you'll find the most diversity in playstyles, as some players like to use what the point built up while others like to keep it stocked up for the big boy in the back. And speaking of, the anchor. For most, this is the character that a player is either the best with or a character that may not have great normals or specials, but when fused with tons of meter can absolutely wreck someone's shit off the most minute of errors. This is where you're going to see those crazy 80% and up combos. Those are the positions, but do not take that as the only way to set up the order of a team. There are players out there that prefer to use whatever meter they get with the first character, then build things up with the mid, players that like to keep a bar in their pocket and burn anything else gained evenly, etc, etc. I'm just giving you a description for the standard build. As I will say for this, and probably most of the character guides if I get to those, the best way to find your team and how you want to use them is to play it yourself and find what's most comfortable for you. Alright, let's get past that character select screen and start moving now, but before you start pressing buttons to attack, we need to go over how you can move around in these games. I promise we'll get to punching people in the face soon, but this is very important stuff and what I feel like has the biggest chance of tripping up newcomers to the series. So, starting with the most basic of basics, you can move to the right, move to the left, crouch and jump either straight up, forwards, or backwards, blocking not included in the air in these games. Double tapping back will have your character backdash. Now this does not provide invincibility like some other fighting games out there, however for many characters a backdash will put them in a mid-air state, which allows for some pretty cool sequences if you have the execution for it down. Double tapping forward will have you dash, and holding down forward on your second tap will have your character continue to run. Run, until they get cracked in the face. Run speed does vary by character by the way, and if you have a character that has a down up charge special, you can roll your stick down to the down forward position while running, which won't stop you and allow you to use the charge special whenever you need to. Easy enough so far, yeah? Well, prepare to get f***ed because here comes hops, hyper jumps and hops, and rolling to come and break your fingers. A hop is done by quickly tapping up, up forward, or up back. Have your stick pointed for even a frame too long and you are jumping, my man. And this may seem like an unremarkable move, but hops are anything but. They're much harder to react to when on defense and allow for you to make progress or keep pressure on your opponent if they don't immediately react to it. Hops and hyper hops are the most important movement option in KOF in my opinion. Oh yeah, the hyper jumps and hyper hops. For hyper jumps, you push the stick in the opposite direction of wherever you want to jump, then push in the intended direction. For example, if you want to hyper jump backwards, you'd press down forward, then up back. The height of the jump doesn't change, however, a hyper jump will bring you much farther forwards or backwards than a normal jump. These jumps and hops can also be done by inputting the desired upwards direction while dashing, allowing for you to punish or counter moves from a good distance away. The downside is that you hang in the air for longer, which can lead to having a delicious supper of fists and shoes shoved in your character's face. The same motions apply to hyper hops, and like hops, the main difference is to do the motion quickly. Too slow, you get a hyper jump. Last thing we have on the list here for movement is rolls, and thankfully the input for this is much kinder to your fingers. To roll forward, you just push the light punch and light kick buttons at the same time, and if you want to roll backwards, just hold back while pressing the two buttons. This option is great for dodging normal and special attacks, moving you closer or further away from your opponent thanks to the invincibility it provides. You can also do what's called a recovery or tech roll by holding the two buttons before you land after getting hit by a move that has knockdown. Failing to do so makes what would be a soft knockdown a hard knockdown, and considering some characters have moves that can get you on the ground, you definitely want to avoid that. However, you can't just roll all day and become an untouchable timeout machine. You can be grabbed out of a roll, there's a recovery period after a roll where you can't attack, move, or block, and some super moves do not care for your rolls, turning your brilliant dodge or approach into...
I want to a pump.
This movement stuff I just mentioned may not seem all too crazy to some, but remember that KOF is a fast fighting game and these options quickly stack up, turning your inputs into... Before you try to do any work on your offense or defense, I highly recommend that you get yourself accustomed to moving around in KOF first and foremost, as the rest of your game can fall apart with poor movement. But now that we got that out of the way, let's do some actual goddamn fighting in this fighting game. KOF is a 4-button fighter. You have a light punch, light kick, heavy punch, and heavy kick. The buttons are usually referred to as A, B, C, and D in most other guides, but for this video we'll just call them by their full names. Each button in KOF does what you think they do. Lights are faster and good for stuffing moves, while heavies do more damage and have more range but are slower as a drawback. Both lights and heavies can also be used while crouching or in midair. But another difference KOF has from other fighting games is that your buttons have different properties and animations depending on how close you are to your opponent. For example, a heavy attack from mid to far range has much more reach for most characters, but as a drawback you can only cancel that normal with a super move or in some cases nothing at all other than a max mode activation instead of the usual special or command normal follow-up. Meanwhile, a close heavy attack can be followed up in any way you want, but requires you to get up right in the grill of your opponent, which may mean eating an attack if you try to pursue it too heavily. KOF also has command normals. This varies heavily from character to character, but generally these are used to either cover some base that the normals don't, such as providing a character with a good anti-air, an overhead or low attack, or there's something to be used to extend combos. Also, something to note is that some command normals have their properties changed if used to cancel a normal. Something like Kyo's Gisheki go Fuyo loses its overhead property, for example. Attacks can have either overhead, low, or mid properties. A mid attack usually accounts for most of your character's moveset and can be blocked either standing or crouching. A low attack can be blocked by a crouching guard but will bypass the guard of a standing opponent. Some characters have standing lows, but for the most part this will be crouching kicks, specials, and command normals. Overheads do the opposite of lows and can be blocked by a standing guard, but will bypass a crouching opponent. Again, this is usually where command normals or specials come in, but also all jumping normals are overheads in this game. These are done by pressing both heavy attack buttons at the same time while either jumping or standing. In older KOF games, this was an attack that was mostly used to get your opponent to the corner or make space, since it has great knockback and good range. It was also the source of all nightmares for anyone that ever played against anyone using Chris. In KOF 14 and 15, this still applies if it's landed on an aerial opponent or if you hit the jumping version, but a new tweak to this attack is that if you land the standing version on a standing opponent, then it has them hit the wall then crumple. Depending on where you landed on the stage, this can then be followed up with a special or super move. Each character has 2 throws, and some have an air throw along with it. To do one, you just have to input one of the heavy attack buttons along with forward or back while you're really close to your opponent, and I mean like smelling their breath close. Being just a smidge too far back will result in a close heavy attack coming out. Throwing with heavy punch will always result in your character throwing your opponent forwards, regardless of the direction preceding the button was forwards or back. Same goes for heavy kick, which will always be a back throw. Use these to flip who's stuck in the corner and help those who love blocking get out of their shells. You can also perform a throw while running by pressing the heavy attack button in the opposite direction of your run when in range, and to break any throw, simply push one of the heavy attack buttons the moment you get grabbed. I was considering leaving this out since this only applies to King of Fighters 15, but there are a lot of players starting with 15, so what the hell. The big new attack in KOF 15 is Shatter Strike, done by doing a quarter circle forward then pushing both heavy attack buttons. This is an attack that can absorb one hit from your opponent, then dishes out a strike that either crumples or wall bounces your opponent, who is then ripe for the picking. It costs 1 bar, and as of this time of recording it will refund half a bar if it lands, and it can also be used mid-combo. The drawbacks are that it can be stuffed if used too late, and if blocked there is a big recovery period which will most likely result in some major HP loss. Each character has their own unique set of special moves which help them fulfill whatever their archetype is. You've got your projectile spamming zoners, your unga bunga rush down gorillas, your weirdos that defy conventional description, and everything in between. Specials also do chip damage unlike normals. Block normals only bring this gauge down, which I will explain in a minute. EX specials are your specials after they've drank their milk and gone to the gym for a few months. These moves, which were previously locked to max mode in 14, can now be used for just half a bar in 15. An EX special has extra perks that the light or heavy versions of a special just don't have, like turning it into an overhead or giving the move crumple, floor bounce, or wall bounce effects on hit. Supers are your combo enders for the most part. They're buffs or the most damaging moves in a character's arsenal and come with their own variety of strengths. You've got your base level supers that cost 1 bar and can be done by pressing either the punch or kick the input calls for. Then you have your EX super special moves that are done by pressing both kick or both punch buttons in a super input. These do significantly more damage but cost 2 bars to pull off. Then you have the big boy climax supers, which are really risky as they usually have a long startup, long recovery, and cost 3 bars, but if landed, you've successfully deleted half of your opponent's HP in one move. Cancels in KOF, which are done by inputting a move when the previous one you've inputted connects, are kinda weird. As I mentioned, some normals and command normals can be cancelled into specials or supers, but what moves can and can't do that seem to have been picked by a coin flip. There are even some moves like Clark's close heavy punch that can be cancelled into a special move, but only on the first hit. If you let that second hit connect, then you can piss off as far as the game is concerned. Either take your cancel into super or max mode or leave it. Special moves can be cancelled into supers. Doing this will result in what's called a super cancel. And having 3 different levels of supers isn't just done for the sake of offering different levels of risk, by the way. In KOF, you can also cancel supers into other supers as long as you climb the ladder. And by that, I mean regular supers can cancel into EX supers, this is called an advanced cancel, or climax supers, called a climax cancel. And EX supers can cancel into climax supers. You cannot super into super, EX into EX, EX into super, or climax into EX or super. Up is the only way to go on this ladder, not down or side to side. Now, canceling supers into supers is usually pretty painless considering how much time you have for the input, but when it comes to doing specials into supers is where I see new players struggle. However, I find that's because newcomers tend to follow the inputs to a T when that is not necessary. Take this cancel with Iori for example. You need to input this special, and then the instant it connects you need to input this super for it to work. You may now be saying, "Not scientifically possible!" But we can make this sequence much easier by understanding how KOF takes your inputs and shortcuts that can be done. So first of all, this DP or Z motion, whatever you want to call it, that I see a lot of people have issues with. Most fighting games are just looking for this string of motions in a quick succession, not a one-to-one input. So this can be done by simply pushing forward and then doing an easier quarter circle forward motion. Looks like a bit of a mess, I know, but hey, look at that input, and there's the 3 directions the game was looking for, and it's more than happy to give you the corresponding special once you hit that attack button. Okay, but we still have the super to take care of, and doing a quarter circle forward, then half circle back right after this is still tough, right? Well, actually you've already done half of the work. Look at your inputs. By inputting that DP motion, you've already inserted that quarter circle the game is looking for. All that's left to do is input that half circle, then button, and the game will reward you with the super cancel you were looking for, turning that input sequence from this to this. Same applies to this cancel with Terry. Once you do this special, the first quarter circle is already in, so instead of breaking your fingers trying to do a double quarter circle input for the super, just put in one more quarter circle and the game is cool with it. When training with your character, just keep this in mind and you will find many of these cancels much easier to digest and execute. I also recommend looking online for more input shortcuts. One last little tidbit to share though about cancels is that if a character has a projectile, you can actually cancel that into a super if you get the input in right as the projectile comes out. This little system here is a KOF staple that must be made out of rubber because the function and strength of this thing fluctuates wildly between KOF games. But for the case of this video, I'm just going to go over how 15 handles it. Max mode for that game at the time of recording is activated by pressing both light kick and heavy punch and costs 2 bars. If used while standing, you have this meter appear, which drains over time, and any EX moves used during this time will draw from the max mode meter instead of your regular one. The cost of supers is also reduced, and you get a damage boost that affects your opponent's guard gauge too. You can also activate max mode mid-combo for what's called max mode quick. In this mode, your gauge only starts at half and there is no attack bonus. But as a trade-off, any hit that normally wouldn't lead to anything suddenly becomes a combo starter, which can lead to big damage. And speaking of combos, let's end this chapter with offense with... Yeah, this is probably what most of you are waiting for, and this is where everything I mentioned previously comes together. Okay, so in KOF, the normal combo structure goes close heavy, command normal, special, then super. Many times you will see a combo like this preceded by a jumping attack, bringing together how important hops are, as hopping heavy is usually a fantastic starter to a combo. But there's one more starter which may be the most powerful of all. Now kneel to the crouching light kick into crouching light punch starter. Bask in the glory of his... Sorry about that. But yeah, this seemingly innocent string is a powerful tool when starting combos and can be utilized by almost every single character in the game. Unlike the close heavy, which is easier to react to, a mid, and may leave you open to a counterattack, the crouching light kick into crouching light punch is quick, safe, starts low, and the punch after the kick is great for helping with hit confirms. The damage may not be as great as a combo that starts with a jumping heavy or a standing heavy, but in KOF where fights can have nothing but stray hits landing, you need to take any combos you can get. And when that first hit has been made, it is time to go into combo mode. Mix and combine the full arsenal of normals, command normals, specials, EX specials, super cancels, max mode, the meter that had been gained through your meter management and team structure, all of that comes together to create a beautiful harmony and some of the most satisfying combos you will ever pull off in any fighting game. Or you can just do auto combos if that's too hard. Simply push light punch 4 times and a 4-hit combo will come out. And in KOF15 they changed this up a bit, so depending on what button you push last, you'll either get a special, super, EX super, or climax super. Well, that was fun. Now it's time for defense. Here is one of your key tools for succeeding in KOF. It's called blocking, which is done by holding either back or down back while your opponent attacks. I know it's hard sometimes with all the overhead low stuff, but you won't be able to do any of those cool combos that you practiced if you block like Bobby Hart. Okay, but seriously, you've got a few more defensive options in this game than just blocking. When you successfully block an attack, you'll have a short window where you can press both light attack buttons plus either forward or back. This will have you roll either away or towards your opponent depending on the direction of your input. And unlike the regular roll, this one is completely invincible for the entire duration of the move. The drawback is that pulling this off will cost you a meter, and rolling in the wrong direction can stick you in the same or even worse position. Best used for making space between you and your opponent or getting out of the corner. Pretty much the same thing as the guard cancel roll here, except that it does a small bit of damage and that you're also going to want to push both heavy attack buttons while blocking. This will cause your character to use their blowback attack for the cost of 1 meter, and like the guard cancel roll, this is something that you need to use wisely, as the blowback attack can be blocked and countered by some characters. Best used again for making space or sending them back to the corner they're attempting to escape from. Now, defense and blocking is good and all, but you can't do that forever. Throughout this video, you may have been wondering what this little blue bar was up here. And well, that's your guard gauge. And if you keep blocking attacks, that little thing will get drained. Take it all the way down and... This will leave your character wide open for a follow-up, and also the attack that dealt the crushing blow will have almost none of the knockback it normally does. Light attacks have a pretty minuscule effect on the gauge, but if you start blocking many heavies or blowbacks, you will see that gauge gone real quick. I've been a fan of this system as it not only incentivizes the player on the attack to stay aggressive, as a guard crush is very rewarding, but it also motivates the player defending to find a way off of the defensive quick and back on the offensive, a big factor to the speed of King of Fighters. It's also possible to lock your opponent into a stun state, but this only happens if said opponent keeps eating attack after attack. Doubtful you'll see it much unless the match is just someone getting steamrolled. And alright, that pretty much covers everything to get you going. There's obviously a lot more def and hard numbers you can take a look at. Dreamcancel.com is a superb source for that stuff. But for this video, I just wanted to get those unfamiliar with the systems and flow of KOF up to speed. I do hope that this video was helpful to you all. If there's any way I could improve future guide videos, please let me know. Please like and subscribe if you did enjoy what you saw, and I will hopefully see you all next time for character-specific guides. Learn to fight and have fun with the beta, guys.
Winner!